You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Hi. I'm Davey.
And I'm Mitch.
And we are the Bargain Bin Gamers. Something in Spanish. I don't know. I keep saying I want to do that. I want to learn how to say that in Spanish. And then...
And you just haven't?
You know, like when you go on a ride on Disneyland and they're like, watch your kids. And they're like, or por favor, children.
That was great.
I know, thank you.
To our non-Spanish listeners out there.
Oh, dear. And to our English listeners out there, this is the podcast YouTube show, an occasional Twitch stream where we put the gay in gaming.
Ooh. While also looking after your hip pocket.
Oh, thank you for remembering.
I'm sorry, you just sprung that on me. It was good.
I know, surprise!
We keep changing it.
Yeah. No, that's what it is for now.
I like that.
For now. It'll stay that way for now.
Sound off in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Sound off in the comments. And whilst you're sounding off in the comments, you might want to consider heading over to patreon.com/BQN because we would like to give a special shout out to all of our BQN Network podcasts. Network patrons, that's wordy.
Nice.
Especially to this show's associate producer,
Sam Johnson.
Oh, Sam.
Oh, my God, Sam.
Oh, God, we love you, Sam.
I better get another meme out of this, Sam.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I haven't been sharing the memes, but
I know.
Each episode, Sam makes a meme, usually of you, and then sends it to me.
Would you ever be mad at an auteur for liking art?
Depends on your definition of art.
I think everything's art.
Art.
Speaking of art, though, real art that we're going to be speaking to today.
Yes. Yeah. So I came across this little gem, like a lot of this. Let's just call this our Melbourne Queer Gaming Festival
series. We're just ticking it off.
Because we're just going through and playing every game from the festival, which is going to conclude with actually meeting the organizer very, very soon, which I'm very excited about. But this is a game that has just been winning award after award after award ever since I saw it get featured, and it is Kitsune Tails from Kitsune Games. And tell I can't talk today. Kitsune Tails. What is Kitsune Tails?
It is a 2D platformer style game in the vein of like a Super Mario.
It's very much inspired by Super Mario Bros.
Definitely.
3, yeah.
But it's got lots of like fantastic Japanese mythology woven into it. It's all based around your fun little kitsune who's going out into the world to rescue your possible girlfriend, possible friend, uncertain. And you are encountering many different obstacles, and it is almost controller-breakingly difficult at some points.
Yeah, but like in a way that if you play platformers back in the 80s and the 90s, especially some of the the iconic Nintendo titles, you'll resonate with it, right? Because it's got that difficulty that makes you keep coming back for more.
Yeah. Let's get good.
Oh yeah.
Get good, mate.
It's like it's like masochist kind of stuff, right? But we were really fortunate enough to get to sit down a week or so ago with Eniko Fox, who is the individual behind Kitsune Games and Kitsune Tails, and it was wow. Geez, we got to learn some really, really, really cool stuff about what went into this game.
We sure did, and there was lots to know. So listen in.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of our audio only interviews. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you're unfortunately not going to get to see our pretty faces, but that's fine.
You can now. But...
yeah. For those listening to the podcast, it's not going to be any different from what you're used to. So
our dulcet tones.
They're just gorge. They're just gorge. They are. You're gorged.
You're gorged.
Have I told you you're gorged lately?
No, you haven't.
No.
You could probably do it a bit more, to be honest.
Okay, cool. Well, that's your one for this year. Anyway, so look, sit back, relax, and enjoy our interview with Eniko Fox from Kitsune Games.
Yay!
Well, hello there, Eniko Fox. It's a pleasure to meet you. How are you going today?
Hi, thanks for having me on today. I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. It's really, really nice to meet you. And we've been really excited about this because Kitsune Tails, your game, has been blowing up my feed for quite some time. Obviously doing this podcast, we both do a lot of research into queer games, and your game just keeps popping up to the top of every single list. I think the first time, like a lot of games we've been playing lately, that you came to our attention was through the Melbourne Queer Gaming Festival, where you were again top of the list, and then again you came up in Gaming Magazine recently as shortlisted for one of the best games of the year. So, congratulations! How does it feel that your little 2D platformer has been receiving so much praise?
Really great, actually. Like before this, because it's been even like getting award nominations and stuff, like you said. And even won an award at Melbourne Queer Games Festival. Before this, our biggest like feather in our cap was Super Bernie World, which blew up in March 2020 and became like, I think it's the number 4 top free game of the month on Steam. But it's been really great to like see so many people so excited about our game, and it's nice to feel like we kind of nailed it.
I would definitely say you did, and it's really funny. It's one of those ones I've been waiting to because I've had so much on my wish list that it came up recently again. I think there was a little special on Steam, and I was like, I've been dying to play this game. So I jumped on it straight away, and I was expecting cute, charming 2D platformer, and that's absolutely what I got.
Nail on the head.
Yeah, but then I got also really punishing and challenging 2D platformer. But I guess out there for our listeners who have not played the game, what's your elevator pitch? How do you describe Kitsune Tails to someone?
So there's like 2 that I like to use. The one that I used during development was like gay furry weeb Mario.
That's the best.
And then the one that I've been using more lately, that's like Super Mario 3, but with Fox girl sword lesbians.
Which is probably what Super Mario was always really meant to be.
Honestly, I think it was destined to become.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also, as a gay weeb, I do appreciate that first title that you decided to give it. It kind of resonated at home with me. And that kind of leads to one of my biggest loves for the game, which I don't know how much in depth you would know about it, because obviously you made the game, so you probably are a big fan of it. But the mythology surrounding the kitsune and the Japanese mythology, like, where did that all come from? Like, how were you inspired by that?
Yeah, that's a interesting story, actually, because our studio is also called Kitsune Games. So I majored in I'm a Bachelor of International Communication, and I majored in Japanese. I had a dual major. And so I spent 6 months living in Japan, studying at Shindai in Matsumoto at university. And at one point I was in Kyoto visiting, and my friend was showing me around Fushimi Inari Taisha, which is like the big Inari shrine.
Yeah.
The people have probably seen like the photos of like rows and rows of gates that you walk through as you ascend the mountain. And I was at this stall and selling merchandise, like little charms and stuff. And I was looking at this little kitsune head charm, which is actually basically the same as our logo, as our studio logo. And I was going to buy it, and it was like, hemming and hawing. And I was like, I probably won't buy it. So I turn around to leave, and I basically immediately come face to face with this kitsune statue, like, bearing down on me and looking straight at me, and I'm like, okay, I'll buy it. and that's where the name of the studio came from, and I've kind of had a fascination with kitsune since then. Before we started development on Kitsune Tails, I had this idea for like a Metroidvania where this little kitsune girl and a human village girl, the kitsune girl gets in trouble, and the human village girl helps her out, and then years later when they're both grown up, now the human village girl is in trouble, and the kitsune girl is like adult and cool and has like a sword and stuff. And she has to, go repay her debts and save her childhood friend / crush. Yeah, and that probably sounds a lot like what the game actually became.
I was going to say there's definitely some skeleton there from the original. And the weeb aspect of having a cool sword anime girl is definitely there, which I really appreciate. And so in the game itself, I definitely don't know as much about kitsunes as you do, but the mythology about them being like tricksters, but also like falling in love with mortals and things like that. Was there any other specific like mythological influences on how the game is played?
I don't think there's like a super strong influence on the actual gameplay. I think that was mostly like just straight up Mario, and then in Act 2, some other games. And also, a big helping of Ganbare Goemon or Mystical Ninja.
Obviously, that's a lot of your gaming inspiration. I'm assuming that growing up, you were big on the Super Nintendo and Mario. But are there any other games that you feel that have influenced the way Kitsune Tails turned out?
Yeah, so it wasn't me, actually. I played all sorts of stuff, DOS and NES, SNES, N64. I was a Nintendo girl, as you can tell. But one thing that really influenced the game in a big way was our lead designer and lead artist, Alison Chabet. She has like a fighting game background. And in Act 2, you play as a different character than Yuzu. I'm trying like to talk around it and not spoil everything.
Yeah.
And that character has a bunch of moves that are very heavily fighting game inspired. Like it has like cool combos, and so that was a big influence. And there's of course the minigame arcade that was obviously influenced by a few old games like Boulder Dash and Arkanoid. So that's definitely in there too.
Yeah, I love the like the Mode 7 style first person game that you play in the arcade, the Haunted Mansion as well. And for everyone, for our audience as well, we were talking to Eniko before we hit record, and so I'm almost up to Act 2, and Eniko said to me leading into the interview today, like, I hope you get up to Act 2 because there's some really cool stuff in it, but it's been a challenge to get as far as I have, because I will say this game's hard.
Yeah.
Like it's I mean, I don't want to say hard, but it's got
demands a lot of skill.
It does demand a lot of repetition, a lot of muscle memory, and I feel like it's even harder than I remember like some of the old school Marios being. Was that always the intention to make a game that was, I don't know, how would you call it? Would you say punishing, or would you say challenging? What's the right term that you would use to describe the difficulty in this game? And I wouldn't even say it's a difficulty curve, because out of the gate,
it's pretty guns balls.
Yeah. It's pretty tough. How would you describe it?
I would say that it's definitely tuned towards fans of the genre, and that was not the initial plan. Like, the initial plan was to have it be a more casual experience. I mean, Super Mario 3 can also be pretty punishing if you're not like warp whistling all over the place. It's not as hard. But that kind of changed over development, because our original guy who was going to do the levels, he had to drop out due to like life commitments. And so we had to find someone new, and we found Listar, who's a well-known streamer, well, relatively well-known, and speedrunner, lots of like involvement with Games Done Quick, that kind of thing. And she also does Super Mario World ROM hacks. And I was like, do you want to make our levels for us? And then she kind of just did what came natural to her. And Allison, she was also way up for it, because, she's fighting game stock. So, she likes things hard. And me and my partner, we talked about it, and we were like, well, I mean, it's probably okay if it's harder, because probably a lot of people who are going to come to this game are going to come because they've been playing Super Mario for like 20 years. and they're going to be really good at it. So maybe it's good to like tune it on the more difficult side. But we did have to make sure that, because a lot of people we knew would also be coming for the story who are not like hardcore platform players. And we knew we had to make it accessible to them, which we did. And I think we did a really good job at making it so that everyone of all skill levels can play and enjoy the gameplay and get through the game and the story.
Yes, so I don't know if I told you this, but I jumped on Eniko's Discord server for Kitsune Games and just started posting screenshots of where I was up to. And like, I'm rage quitting help. And I didn't even realize up until that point I could walk back to the village and buy power-ups and take those back in. And I spent all my coins and I used all my power-ups on like one attempt to get through a level, which is a good way though. Like I think that really helps with replayability because I found myself going back and replaying levels to build up coins so I can go and buy power-ups and get through the levels that I was stuck on.
And with that, the teleporting back and getting the different items and things like that, was that an intentional add-on just to make it so that it wasn't too difficult for someone like myself who's not very good at these kinds of games?
Yeah, that was very intentional. It was, it came from the idea that, we were looking at Mario and it has all of this like baggage that is just like, well, they do it like this because it's Mario and that's how they've always done it. And we were like, well, we're not technically Mario, so we can, re-examine some of this stuff. And, if we don't feel like it's adding anything, then we can just get rid of it or change it. One of the things is the coins, which in Mario games, like if you get enough coins, you get a 1-up, but it's like 1-up's okay. That's pretty 90s. We don't really need a live system anymore. Like Mario still has lives, but then you game over and it doesn't mean anything. So I was like, well, we need to keep the coins because they're a big part of like, they're the yellow paint of the Mario world. They kind of signal where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. If there's a blind jump, you can, make a little arrow out of coins and people know, okay, I can safely go down here because the devs told me so. And I'm like, well, if we're having coins, they have to do something. And if we have this, more difficult gameplay and we have this Super Mario 3 style inventory, which the game does, why don't we make it so that the coins like form an economy where players, they can go to the village and do maybe a little side quest and maybe buy some items. And then they can use the items to tune their experience in the game, because on the like default like gameplay style, you can use items inside the level, unlike Mario 3 where you can only use them in the overworld. And we definitely tuned it so that was the intended way to play. And then the minigame arcade also like folds back into that, because you get frustrated on a level and you go back to the village. And you can kind of like decompress a little bit by playing some mini games at the arcade. But then the mini games, they cost coins, so that gives you use for the coins, but they also generate more coins. Yeah. And then you can, like, if you're really stuck, you can just grind a few mini games and then have enough coins to buy the upgrades that you need.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me because I can't even play games like Dark Souls because I'm not very
I'm surprised. I thought you loved like From Software
I
games.
love like Bloodborne only because
okay.
that one's like completely different. So but I found that was like a super useful feature. And conversely, were there some features when you were playing through the game and obviously like testing it that you found that you had to make a little bit harder, that you were like, this needs to have a bit more of a curve to it or people are going to breeze through the game?
Design-wise, we definitely wanted to avoid the Bam Bam problem that Mario 3 has, where you just jump on his head like a couple of times and he never gets to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you've only got to do it 3 times and that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we wanted to avoid, because Mario has like this problem with the bosses that they're not very interesting, because every boss needs to be able to be done by like the base little Mario, which can only like bop on their heads. And so we really like tried our best to make all of the bosses, they have to be boppable, because it's the same, That's a technical term, by the way. Boppable.
Bop.
Boppable.
Yep.
Yep. I know
They
exactly
have
what
to
you're
be
referring
boppable.
to. Yeah.
Otherwise, the player can just get hard stuck. But we also wanted to make it so that, you can't just trivially chain bop them and then just like avoid the entire boss fight. So that was definitely a bit of a design problem that we faced. And that was actually one of the most difficult ones.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that would be like having to try and come up with all these unique different ways to interact with bosses and keeping them all, I guess, distinct enough so that you don't feel the repetition. Was there like a design process for the bosses, for like having specific designs for specific ones and having different play styles?
I don't know. We kind of just made it up as we kind of just flew by the edge of our seats. Allison did most of like the initial design for them, like the initial like the aesthetic design and like the elemental design that came from the story, and then Allison came up with basically a mechanical gimmick for each of them. And then I implemented that, and that usually like it's like, oh well, on paper this sounded good, but now when it meets reality, I have to like iterate on this, and it was kind of a back and forth. I'm really pleased. Sometimes people complain about the hitboxes on the bosses, and that's because I actually implemented most of the bosses in like 1 or 2 days during like mega crunch leading up to release. So I'm like, I'm super pleased with how the bosses came out, and that the thing most people say about it is like, oh, well, some of them sometimes have hitboxes that are a little wonky. I'm like, I'll take it.
You've mentioned some of the other members of your team here, and I think one of the things that surprises me when I play an independent title like yours is just what a well-polished and well-designed experience it is. Like, this feels like it could be, this feels like any studio could have put it out, right? Like, and that's why you say you nailed it. How big was your team behind this game?
So that's like a complicated question when you're an indie. I guess you haven't rolled the credits, so you haven't seen the credits, but they're pretty long. Like long enough that I was like, I need to put some like little vignettes with the characters so that people don't lose focus. But I would say, so the core team, like the team who worked the most directly on the game. So that's me, Allison, who did a lot of the design work and was the lead artist, Liz Starr, Elizabeth Dummler, who did all of the levels, or well, almost all of the levels. And then there was my partner, James, who did the vast majority of the writing, basically almost all of the writing. And then there's Wayne Kubiak, who did some supporting pixel art. Jorge Saldias, who did all of the music. Shoehead, who did the overworld art. I'm missing someone. Oh, right, Serena, who did like the concept art and the portraits. So that's the core team.
How does a team like that come together to work on a project like this? Because Mitch and I have been talking to a lot of indie devs lately on the podcast, and we've spoken from one-person teams.
Doing it for the last 8 years.
Yeah, like,
themselves.
Well, yeah, in the case of Max of Nocturnals, that was just Max and his boyfriend, and then Mo for QueQuest. Mo did it mostly themselves, but then would, hire freelance people here and there. So how did your team kind of come together for Kitsune Games?
Well, the core of the team was mostly the same team that did Super Burning World. So we did Super Burning World, and that came together in like 2 or 3 weeks, which was awful for me because that was an awful grind. But we were like, okay, we got to get this out before, Super Tuesday in 2020.
Yeah.
But the team worked together so well, and that was just like people we knew that we asked us, like, we want to do this. Are you in or not? Yeah, so we had the Super Burning World team, and that was like a really good experience with that team. And we were like, well, we're just going to, roll this team over into the follow-up. And we lost Anthony, who did the levels, and he was replaced by Liz Starr. So that's basically the core team. The only one who wasn't on that team is Shoehead. And that's actually a funny story because, like, he was a mutual of mine on social media, but he was also a mutual of Allison's. And I'd kind of like, Allison was overworked with the pixel art, and I was like, well, we need overworld pixel art, and I don't want to, we need someone else for this. I can't get Allison to do this. And I was already eyeing him, and then Allison was like, hey, we need someone for overworld art. How about Shoehead? And I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah, sure. So that's how that happened. Yeah, and it's just like all people we knew. I mean, even we co-published with Midboss, and we had like a history with them, sort of like as companies. Like we've interacted before, so we asked them if they wanted to co-publish, and they said yes. And we got Stride PR to help us with our PR through Midboss, and that was also, they'd also done work on Super Burning World. So it was basically just, a bunch of people we knew, most of whom were queer in some way.
I guess now's a good time to sort of bring that up.
Yeah.
There's, it seems like there's a bit of a queer love triangle at the core of the story of the game, but maybe not. Maybe there's some things happening. Won't spoil it for people who haven't played it, but there is definitely a love triangle, but it's not maybe quite as triangular as some people might think it is, based on the part I just played this evening.
Oh, it has many overlapping shapes.
It's a geometry lesson.
Yeah. But what was your approach to writing and portraying, LGBTQ plus characters and themes in what is a very, cute, wrapped up in a cutesy platformer that, looks like it could belong on the Nintendo Entertainment System?
Yeah, we definitely, so we came up with this in like mid 2020 when, everything was not great. And we wanted to like just put a cute queer love story out there without any of the, dark baggage like acceptance and all of that. That's not part of our setting. We didn't like, those stories are great and totally valid, but sometimes people just want to have a break from that stuff, and they just want to see themselves represented in something, nice that they can feel good about instead of, wallowing. So that was very important to us. Also, my partner James, he did a lot of research on like this is going to sound weird, but he looked like at real like queer people who, matched the kind of characters that we were going for. And he kind of like picked some things from that to make the verisimilitude a lot better. And then one of the big things, the big struggles was actually because I was like, well, we're not gonna, what's that trope called?
Yeah. The princess is in another castle kind of thing, but
yeah, that kind of thing. Like, well,
hero's journey kind of stuff, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Akko can't be just like a MacGuffin for Yuzu to go after. Like she has to be, she has to be empowered and like have agency in the plot. You've seen some of that in the intro, but there's a lot more of that in Act 2, and especially in the finale of the game.
You've got me so excited to get to Act 2, by the way.
I mean, Act 2 was actually, we had this whole idea that didn't come to fruition, and then we just like, because we were going to play it more open-ended and more non-linear, that you have to like backtrack and find secret exits, and the player can have dialogue choices, and we just streamlined the heck out of all of that.
And the game's got so much character to it as well.
It's really charming.
Mitch was saying to me when we were playing it just before you jumped online to chat to us that you were really surprised by the voice acting.
Yeah, I've never played like pretty much any of the inspirations for this game. Not that I assume Super Mario 3 had voice acting.
No, it didn't.
But when I loaded the game and it had these really cute voices, and all the voices were really, really charming, and like even the parents had like a little bit of sass and they had a little bit of spunk in them and things like that. It really caught me off guard. So for the voice acting, is that the team? Is it just you guys, or did you outsource that?
No, we're not that good. So a friend of mine, Manuela, she's a voice director, and we asked her if she would voice direct for our game. And she's super talented. She did an amazing job, and We did blind casting for all of the cast. So we didn't, like, everyone's auditions were just assigned a number. We didn't know their names or who they were. And we just, like, picked the best ones for each role. And I don't know how many auditions, like, games usually get, but we got a lot of games, a lot of auditions. So we had our pick of very good voice actors. Yuzu is voiced by Kara Buckland, so of Nier fame, and a funny thing that you mentioned the parents. So before we put out Kitsune Tails, we did a reskin of Super Burning World called Kitsune Zero, which had like 3 times the number of levels that Super Burning World did. And we did that mostly so that speedrunners could like submit it to speedrunning marathons, because it has a very active speedrunning community, or it did. But they were afraid that, it was too political. So we did that, and we kind of styled it as a sort of prequel. And that's about Yumi, who's Yuzu's mom. And they're fighting these samurai who made like this dark pact. And Yasunori, who is like basically a sort of wizard type, but he's more like a bureaucrat wizard than, flinging fireballs type wizard. He asked the Kitsune for help, and they sent Yumi, and she's like full of swagger, and she's voiced by Michelle Knotts, right? Who does like the most amazing, like, manic performance we've ever heard. Like, she wasn't supposed to be so like full of swagger and manic, but she just like owned that character, and it was amazing. And then Yasunori, who is voiced by David Dixon. That's right, David Dixon. He also, like, he has these adorable voice cracks and stuff in Kitsune Zero. And they were just so fun. And I was like, no, we have to write them into Kitsune Tails because I want to work with these people again. They have to be, people need to know about Yuzu's parents because they hook up. Like, Yumi basically just seduces this nerdy guy.
Michelle Knotts was the voice of Jessie, Misty, and May in 652 episodes of Pokemon.
Yeah, I just saw it on there. And I'm a massive Pokemon fan, so I thought I recognized the voice.
Absolute diehard.
He also, I think, did Nurse Joy a lot.
Yeah. I saw that we just got the IMDb up, and I was like, that's where it's from. So this is something that I wanted to ask. This is just to expand a little bit more on maybe not just those characters, but everyone. But were any of the characters changed because of the voice actors that you got? Because it sounds like you've got so much like character and swag from some of these voice actors. Did you tailor any of the actual characters to almost fit them a little bit more? Or were they pretty much set in stone by the time you got them to record?
Most of the characters were pretty set. But we did, like, with Michelle Knotts and David Dixon, who play the parents, because we knew what their performances were like ahead of time. We definitely wrote them so that we were playing to the actors' strengths for those characters.
What's been some of the most rewarding feedback and recognition that the game has got, because it's achieved so many awards, and it's just it's like I said at the top of the interview, it just keeps popping up. What's been the most unexpected award you've received, or the most unexpected or just most delightful piece of feedback or surprising piece of feedback you've received about the game?
We've had the best feedback. It's not from any award or anything. It's from just regular people who've played the game. Like, we've had a few mild spoilers, but I'm not going to say who it applies to. We've had a few like asexual or aromantic like streamers reach out and be like, "Oh, when I got to this part, I was, fighting back tears." And we have gotten feedback from people who have, shed a few tears at, seeing themselves represented in the game. And that's definitely been the best one. And also being like at the top of like the Melbourne Queer Games Festival, that's obviously amazing. We're also nominated as Best LGBTQ Indie Game in Gaming Mag's Gaming Awards. That's with the Y. That's been really cool. And then we were in the Digi Awards. We were nominated for Cultural Impact and Best Retro, so we're dual nominees. So that was amazing. And in Best Retro, like, I forget if they were both best retro, but we were up against like games like UFO 50 and Nine Sols and stuff. That's pretty good company to be in. I'm really happy about that.
Given that, Kitsune Tails has been out for a while now, and it's had so many accolades passed on it, I can see that, from your website, you've got a few plans to bring the game to console. Has that come to fruition yet? Are you still working on that? What's next for the game? What's next for the studio? Are you taking a bit of a break, or have you got more work that you want to do?
I did take a bit of a break because before the game came out, it was a rough time. We were running out of money.
Yeah,
wasn't sure when we would start bouncing rent checks. I basically, we made it to the finish line because I begged online for money from people, which our community really, came through for us, which is, I can't express my gratitude enough for that. It was a horrible time, honestly. I wish I could have enjoyed it more. And I was like working 100-hour weeks for like April, May, June, July. Yeah, for like 4 months, I was just every week was 100-hour week. It was grueling. And after that, I took a bit of a break. We moved into a cheaper place too. And I'm still suffering from burnout, so I'm only recovering now. But we have been working on the consoles. So that is still coming this year. I can't exactly say when. There's also a bunch of industry stuff wrapped up in that because the games industry is completely messed up right now. So we're going to have to do more of the heavy lifting on that, like in-house, which has slowed things down as well. But those are coming, and we have also, this is the first time I'm speaking about this in public, so you get a scoop.
Oh my God.
We are actually... have been working on a free content update for people. I can't really say what it's going to be, but everyone who's finished the game basically asked for this, so we decided to give it to them. And that's probably going to drop when consoles drop.
That is so exciting, and there's so much about everything you just said that I just want to congratulate you for what you did, but also well done for being so vulnerable about the toll that this took, and for taking the time that you need to look after yourself, and for being so open and honest about that. I think that's so important for people to just go, you know what, I'm proud of the game, but I wasn't okay, and I needed to do what I needed to do.
I mean, that's important to me. We're actually also we are going to do more Kitsune Tails stuff, like franchise. I can't say anything about that either. But again, it's what people have asked for, so we are going to, deliver.
Hopefully it comes at a bit more of like an enjoyable speed as well. It doesn't have to be so grueling. I hope and pray for you.
Well, the thing is that we're going to be reusing like the engine that we have.
Yeah.
And then just like changing the content. So that's going to be much better than having to build the entire game. It's kind of like a sort of, when they did Tears of the Kingdom after they did Breath of the Wild sort of thing. But it's going to have much more of a twist than Tears of the Kingdom had on Breath of the Wild. I can assure you of that. It's going to be similar but substantially different, but in a good way. It's really hard to talk around this. Well, one of the things, I don't know if we'll be able to pull it together, but I'm hoping to do like a sort of indie Double Fine adventure documentary of like the next project as it's being made, because I think it's important that people know what it looks like to make these games as an indie, especially like an indie, like a queer team of people who are basically trying to bootstrap, their studio. Because people assume that we're bigger than we are and we have way more money and resources than we do. But no, we're a bunch of impoverished queers. So, and I really want to show the world kind of like what Double Fine did, what it actually, what it entails, what it looks like. And sometimes when you're making a game, it hurts.
Well, I mean, making a game is like making any kind of art, digital or otherwise. You kind of got the double whammy there: queer and artists. Both impoverished queers and suffering artists are two very real things. And you're sharing the love with that a lot too, because you've embraced like the modding community as well, and you've got I haven't actually played around with this, but you've mentioned here on the website that you've got the ability to create and play custom mini games using the same scripting that you used. How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, when you mentioned the Ghost House minigame, it's kind of a sort of Wolfenstein 3D type game. We actually made that entirely in the same scripting language that modders can use. In general, I just think I really like modders. Like, I've been a modder.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like build support into the game for that from the ground up. The mini game framework is because I like fancy consoles like Pico 8, which basically it's a program that pretends to be a console that never existed, like a retro 8-bit console, and you can make games for it. And I really like those, so I kind of like, to keep myself motivated, snuck a fancy console into our game that people could make games for, and told myself that it was worthwhile. And hopefully it was. And that's how like that came to be. I basically did it for myself, but also knowing that other people could use it to, create stuff, use our game as a creative jumping off platform. One of our level editors, actually, our big like custom mappers, she, after doing a bunch of custom maps for Kitsune Tails, she started working on her own platformer. So that's really neat to have inspired people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, there's so much for you to be proud of, and I guess I can't say that enough. And it's been so lovely to actually get to chat to you and get to meet you and interact with you online, because I've fallen in love with the game, and I will be finishing it. I did see your Blue Sky post saying that there's a percentage of players that don't get past Act 1, but everyone who does makes it goes all the way to the credits. And I promise you, I will be one of those people. I guess the last question for you is, how can people, apart from going and buying your games, how can people continue to follow along and support your journey?
I'm on Blue Sky as eniko.bsky.social. I always get that wrong. I'm also on Mastodon, which is more my main, which is Eniko at peoplemaking.games. Yeah, and if you really want to support us with like money, that would be really cool. I have a Patreon. You don't really get anything for it, but there is patreon.com/sharkhugsEniko.
Yeah, we'll include a link to that right next to our own Patreon.
Subscribe.
Yeah. Come on, everyone. It's time to sign up to Patreons. Do two at the same time. Let's do it. Absolutely. We will make sure that we include links to all of those. And everyone, if you haven't got out there and played Kitsune Tails, it is currently about, I think it's about $25 Australian on Steam.
Australian, yeah.
About $25 Australian on Steam.
Worth every cent.
Fantastic price for you'll get so much amazing gameplay out of it. And Eniko, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your amazing story. It's been amazing.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. And if I can say one last thing that we didn't cover in the rest of our chat. If you're not a platform player, or you're not like an action game player, and you're like, I'm too bad at, like, you're like, I want to see the story, but I'm too bad at games like this. I can't do it. We added a play style for that called a leisurely stroll. And when you die, it's basically like the old arcade machines. When you die, you just immediately come back on a little cloud that you can fly around on, and it won't stop your progress. And a bunch of people have played through the entire game like that, and you can still have fun because you can still like try all the jumps and experience all of the power-ups and abilities and stuff. But it's not frustrating if you're really bad at a game like this. So don't let that stop you if you're like interested in the story, but you're like, yeah, I don't know about a platformer.
That sounds like how I'm going to have to play it because I'm not very good at these.
I must admit that from time to time I've seen that in the pause menu, the change your play style. When I've been like,
the game's just saying,
like,
you need
no,
to
I'll
get
do it. I'll get there. Well, thank you, Eniko. We will definitely make sure that you'll give that a try.
I definitely will because I need it.
and best of luck for the future of the game.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. And good luck with the future of your podcast.
Oh, I didn't know that you like to dance.
It was never the right time. Everything is perfect. I made sure of it. I'm not going to let that witch steal you away!
You'll do great. Just remember to enjoy the journey.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you give it a big thumbs up on YouTube or follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast from and leave us a 5-star review. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky and follow along on our live Twitch streams. You can also continue the conversation in our BQN podcast Discord by clicking the link in the episode description. Don't forget that the Bargain Bin Gamer is part of a larger network of podcasts called the BQN. You can support this and other BQN programs by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/BQN. We'd love to hear your feedback on the episode. Leave us a comment on YouTube or send us an email to bargainbingamer, GAYMER, @gmail.com. Until next time, au revoir.
Double T Media.